You're listening to If Only I Were Wiser podcast, where Raina Wilson brings together wisdom and raw life stories to provide encouragement and truth. So many times it's easy to become discouraged in your own pursuit of health because your story or circumstances look drastically different from your favorite influencer or even the expectations you had for yourself. If that is you, welcome! This space is for you to learn, breathe, and maybe just listen and see what wellness could look like for you. Hey friends, welcome back to the If Only I Were Wiser podcast. On today's episode, I have super cool guest, Bam Lionheart. Bam has been a movement coach for over 8 years. He has experience in gymnastics, football, jiu-jitsu, wrestling, CrossFit, Olympic lifting, endurance running. Any kind of movement, he's done it. Now, his goal is to give his clients freedom through movement by eliminating pain, in-depth movement education, and reintegrating natural movement patterns. And that's exactly what we get into this episode. All things primal movement. How do we do it? How do we return to it? And how do we reintegrate that into the patterns of everyday life? This conversation is unlike anything we've done yet. So let's dive in. All right, Bam. Welcome to the If Only I Were Wiser podcast.
If only I were wiser. Thank you so much for having me. Stoked to be here.
I want to just dive into your story. It's been so fun just getting to chat with you and just see the way that you approach the world. So let's dive in there. And how did you get to primal movement? Like, how did you get to be at this place, sitting across from me for this recording?
It's interesting you say that. How did I get to primal movement? Because I started a business, Primal Movement, where our mission is to educate, inspire, and coach the natural movements of the human body. And to really understand what are the natural movements, like primal is the definition, or one of the definitions is essential. So like, what are the essential movements that a human has that every human is going to do throughout their lifetime? Those are like super basic movements that I feel like we don't spend enough time understanding. Things like walking, running, climbing, swimming, and even from, bent leg squats, like squatting down to the ground, or a straight leg reach, like a hinge, or some kind of reaching or bending over, even lying down on our sides or resting on the ground. It's like very important for us as a species to understand what those are. So when did I start primal movement? I really started just like everyone else. I started the moment that I was independent from my mother, and I was, either placed on my back or on my stomach. And I was making small movements, trying to understand how to use my body so that I could, first and foremost, move through my environment. That was my main priority. That was your main priority. That's all of our main priority when you're born, is like, let me move in my environment to go get nourishment from my mom, or go find some safety in somebody else.
Yeah.
And that was like a deep instinctual thing, because we also saw that other people were moving around, and we also have this kind of in our body. Like, there's some really good studies of newborn babies that are placed in water, and they start to do this crawling stroke immediately. So we know that it's somewhat in our DNA, in our just who we are, in our fabric, this ability to front crawl. And the front crawl is just a baby crawl, but also walking is an upright version of a crawl. And then even things like swimming or climbing. So all the things that you would see a newborn do. And swimming is one of those, that we have this innate ability to float and to surface ourselves from the get-go. We don't have to necessarily get taught, but we do have to, in all of those environments that we are placed, learn how to navigate it from point A to point B. Some people call that locomotion. So like the ability to move like from one end of the pool to the other, or your kid across the kitchen, either crawling or standing up, or maybe holding onto the cupboard. So all of us start our relationship with primal movement the moment that we are an independent person. And this relationship with our movement, this relationship with our body, the way that our muscles, joints, tendons, our connective tissue, our nervous system, like the entire thing is moving through throughout our environment, is just a very intimate relationship that we have, up to the point of death.
Hmm.
And this intimate relationship, just like every relationship, we can really make it a healthy one, a positive one that nourishes us and feeds us if we give it the right love, care, and attention. But it can also turn into a relationship that is really difficult, like for people that have trouble walking, people that maybe are experiencing some kind of chronic pain, like a low back pain, or just a little nagging knee pain, or they have some kind of serious injury. When, as Moshe Feldenkrais says, when our quality of movement gets diminished, our quality of life also gets almost equally diminished, like
Right.
on a 1-to-1. So if that happens when our movement gets diminished, like if anyone is, anytime you feel sick, anytime you got some kind of injury or something happens to your body and you can't really move, immediately you recognize that the way you perceive reality is just a little bit different with this new understanding. So we can improve our quality of movement just like we did from the very beginning when we taught ourselves how to roll from our stomach to our back, how to crawl, how to walk, and ultimately how to run. We taught ourselves how to do this. We improved our own ability to move in these essential ways. And we did it before we were aware of things like language, like the English language. So we didn't have the ability to necessarily be coached verbally or cognitively, as many people will engage, like in school and reading books and watching YouTube and having somebody tell them how to do things. We didn't have that ability when we first started. We used something a little bit different, where we were visualizing our environment and then we were trying to either copy what we were seeing or attain something in our environment or move away from something in our environment. Um, so primal movement is kind of everything. It's something that we all do. And I just find myself in a position where I'm extremely excited about it. I have this really cool relationship with my own body and my movement that I like to share with the world, where it's a relationship that is positive, that is nurturing, where I'm
Hmm.
constantly learning, where I'm constantly getting feedback from my body and listening to that, and it's kind of helping me direct my life and enjoy and have a really good experience of life where I get to move when I want and how I want and not feel restricted. And that feels
Yeah.
very freeing and it fills me with a lot of joy. So I'm trying to share that with as many people as I can.
Yeah. And we're so thankful for it. And it's been interesting just to have this conversation with you because I'm thinking now, like, in my own story, there were points of disconnection, right? Like, if we have this innate ability to be primal, because like I'm watching it in my son literally as he's growing right now,
Right.
which is super interesting because I've even had that conversation with my brother of like his deep squat is comfortable and he just kind of lives there. Like yesterday we were outside playing in his sandbox and I was just like almost just like a gorilla, like we play bear. He walks around on the floor like a gorilla. He sat there in a deep squat for I don't know, 15 minutes before he like took off in the backyard because
Hmm.
he wanted to go run around. But all that to say, was there ever this point of disconnection in this journey for you or this place of like I've shared in CrossFit, it was this place of like, okay, I know what I was doing previously didn't feel good for my body. So I'm going to learn alongside someone who may knows more than I do in this area. But then it's also like now I'm in bowspring, just this evolution of movement. So was it Olympic lifting for you? Was it like where was this place of like, wait a minute, where have I gotten disconnected from this natural form of movement?
It's really interesting because the disconnect, the largest one that I'm aware of, happened because of engaging in a specific something.
Okay.
Like when I was young, all of us, you can just play. Like I was watching some children across the street. They're in a church field, and they were maybe like 3, 4, 5, and they were all just like running around each other and kind of pushing each other, and like they were creating like a game in real time.
Yeah.
No one was like saying what is happening, and people would just shout like, "I'm the king," and then someone would come and push them. No, you're
Yes.
not. I'm the king. And now we're playing the king game, and then someone goes, "Tag, you're it," and then all of a sudden we're playing tag.
Right.
So it's like this very creative in real time thing. So we all have that experience, and then we also have the experience of now I'm going to go play soccer,
Yeah.
or now I'm going to go do gymnastics, or now we're in physical education. We put ourselves in some kind of a different container that isn't completely as free and real time flow state as when we were kids. And these containers are really important for us. We know that games, structured games, uh, throughout human history, we've had them. They're really important for us. And we also get to hone in on different skills or different community bonding things like dances. You'll see
Right.
people and cultures create insane dances, but it's a very regimented and structured thing. CrossFit is a very regimented, structured thing. Tennis, very regimented and structured. And I think my experience is very common to a lot of other people, where I was like, okay, um, I started with youth basketball, gymnastics, and football, and then went to martial arts. When I found martial arts, that one like really pulled me into like loving physical engaging with my body every single day. Drew me to Muay Thai, boxing, wrestling, swimming, CrossFit. Um, more gymnastics, more running, just like what else can I do to engage with my body and feel really good? And I knew that I could find it in many different places wherever I was called to do it. But as I dove into that process of competing in Olympic weightlifting, competing in mixed martial arts, doing cage fighting
Yeah.
or going on long runs or long swims or whatever it is that I wanted to do, um, I was gaining movement relationship with my body in these containers. Like CrossFit is a really
Mhm.
good container for us to learn the relationship of how to overcome our physical stress, anxiety, and our body's willingness like to not go or to go further. We go into CrossFit and that's like really what you learn is like how to use your body in like the fastest, most aggressive way, like turn everything on. Even when your body's telling you like, please stop, you're like, no, we're going to redline it. That is a skill that you kind of learn in CrossFit. And that's the relationship that you and your body start to mirror with each other. And you can get really good at that. But that's only one skill. Like there's many other skills like for instance, I was doing arborist work, tree climbing, cutting down trees or
Mhm.
like pruning trees. And the skill that I realized that arborists have is like this ability to predict into the future and like plan out a way to set a rope in a line and which path they have to do to climb so they can cut one tree and this one tree has this amount of weight and so it's going to fall like this and this is going to be my movement like they were predicting themselves into the future
Yeah.
and their job was like they were successful if they like continued to do that. Um, so the original question was like, where's the disconnect? What was when after I had really taken all my energy into all these different places, jujitsu, tree work, running, uh, anything, yoga, like
Yeah.
all of it. At the very end of it, I realized that the human body is designed to do some basic movements
Mhm.
like squatting, hinging, walking. And I was like, okay, that's crazy that that's what it's designed to do. It's not necessarily designed to do like a CrossFit AMRAP
Mhm.
or to do an ultra marathon.
Sure. Yeah.
It's not necessarily designed to do that. Just on its base function, it's designed to do things like squatting, hinging, and walking. And when I had that realization, the the mentality that I had when I went into CrossFit, where I was like, I'm going in. That's why CrossFit communities are so contagious because everyone shows up with a really positive attitude and just a willingness to say, yes, we're going to go and do something hard and we're all going to do it together and we're not going to complain about it. That's why it's like such a good community. Same with like jujitsu. Hey, we're going to like practice hurting each other, killing each other, but we're going to do it in a way that's respectful, disciplined, and also like doesn't completely break one you or I, and also is free of emotion. So we're learning that skill. There's skills in yoga, quieting the mind, opening the body, tension, relaxation. There's all of this everywhere. Um, after I had the realization that the body is designed for these small things, and all of those mentalities that we can bring into one of those different containers, like what you bring into bowspring or what you found in CrossFit or what you found in soccer, that you can have that same mentality 24/7 when you wake up to when you go to sleep, and you can be training and aware of your movement and this relationship that we have with our body. Then I think that's where a huge connection can happen, that I no longer just listen to my body or have some kind of like in-depth, intimate conversation with it when I do CrossFit or when I do yoga or when I do meditation. But the rest of my life, I just turn it off and I don't listen to it
Yeah.
unless it's telling me like, hey, your knee's hurting or hey, this is hurting. Like that's the only time any relationship where if the only time we listen to it is when something bad is happening, that's we're in deep waters type of thing.
Yeah. It's a strained relationship, you
Yeah.
know? Which is interesting because now that I think back to like in my postpartum like introduction into motherhood, it was really this place where I just remember it was a light bulb moment of like these motherhood moments and these motherhood movements. And I remember like making just like short videos of just things that I was doing. And I was like, wait a minute, like in a CrossFit gym, this was a part of my workout, but me just doing life as a mother, like I'm in a deep squat, at the beginning was like 75% of the time. Or I'm hinging to pick up things. I'm hinging to pick up my son. I'm bear crawling on the floor with him because he wants to play horse or bear. And that was just this place, I think, in my head of, like you said, the transition to freedom in my body instead of being this place of, I feel most attuned during my hour workout when I'm
Right.
doing A, B, and C. And that's what I think like Bowspring has been so beneficial is like, how am I bringing this awareness outside of this like pocket of a class to the way that I function throughout the day? And I even just noticed like, oh, am I standing? Am I standing in a way that is allowing myself to breathe? Or in the car, I think we were driving somewhere the other day and I was like, why am I so uncomfortable right now? And I like made my like just adjustments. I'm like, oh, there it is. Or even sleeping with my son, I've noticed, which I don't know if this is a thing or not, but I've noticed my body naturally sits in like the side lying bow now when I go to sleep with my knees together. I'm like, this is so interesting. Like, I feel comfortable in positions that would have never been comfortable because I think I've allowed myself this space to take what I'm learning, like you said, these skills, which are not inherently bad, but applying them outside of this 1 hour window.
Yeah. The integration. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with like really loving CrossFit or yoga practice or anything else. But the overall hope is that whatever skills you learn in that specific environment, whether it's football, yoga, like the spectrum is so wild. Like you go on Instagram today and you'll see humans moving in some of the wildest ways. And we are out there collecting information and experiences with our body. Our body is the medium at which we experience those things. The overall hope for all of that is how do you integrate that into just being a normal human, which all of us are just normal humans. Is like, if the 700-pound deadlift, is that going to make you better at just like walking around your house, being a father,
Mhm.
the work that you have? Like, is that going to help you or is that going to hinder your ability to do the basic necessities of life? Like we're talking about, just provide security for your family, like do you have community, like just the base foundation of your life. Sometimes we can get pulled into like these crazy extremes, thinking that that is what is going to be the healthiest or the best, or like, just get as strong as you can, like lift as much weight,
Right.
get as strong as you can. That sounds like a really positive thing, but ultimately lifting so much weight and getting as strong as you can will break you. Just like not doing any movement or not doing any resistance training, you can get easily broken. There's like a perfect medium that happens. And the only way we can understand that medium of like where's too much and where's too little is by asking ourselves, does this integrate into my everyday life? Do I wake up feeling like
Mhm.
happier, with more energy, with more capacity to go and do something really fun or cool for my life right now?
Which I'm curious then, how do you think the fitness, the fitness realm plays into this area? Because like we've talked about both ends of the spectrum, right? Like you have the dogmatic grind no matter what you do, which I will say for women is one of the most damaging things if you're not hormonally aware of where you're living cyclically. That has been a major transition for the way that I approach movement now. So you have like health and fitness or diet culture and fitness, and then you have holistic health, primal movement, and I just think more consciousness around our bodies.
Hmm.
And you can see both ends of the spectrum. Like you can see I've had conversations with women in diet culture and I've had conversations with women that are pursuing holistic health with the same kind of fear-based mentality. So, where does this realm of fitness become truly harmful from going, "Oh, I'm learning a skill," and you mentioned it a little bit about it's this place of you meet your brokenness, but, like, where does it go from learning a skill and fitness to, "Oh, if I don't pivot right now, this could actually be very detrimental for my body." Because, like you said, in a lot of movement patterns, we're programmed and taught that brushing past that is a good thing.
That's correct. We're taught that pushing past that is a good thing. And sometimes it is. That's why it's confusing because
Mhm.
sometimes it is very important, but then sometimes we know that we should have made a change. Or hindsight is 2020. We're like, oh, that was the moment when I should have made a change. That moment can happen like that, like super fast. That's what's super interesting about movement and the body. The best example that I have is um, I grew up doing jujitsu and different martial arts since I was like 15. And when I found jujitsu and martial arts, it did what it has done to a lot of people, which is it quote unquote saves them. Like it just fills your body,
Mhm.
yourself, your how you view yourself with just such honesty, clarity, and also you just carry yourself like you're comfortable with yourself because you've been through these battles every single day. You're going to the gym and people are like sparring with each other, and you gain a perspective that is grounding and kind of more real. That's why like some mixed martial arts people are like so nice. So I had this idea that jujitsu and martial arts, like I would go into the gym, I would fight with my friends, and I would leave and just be like, I'm so grateful to be alive and go home and eat
Yeah.
some food and like shower and just go to bed. Like whatever happened that day just falls by the wayside because it's nothing compared to one of your really strong and athletic friends trying to punch you in the face. That's a real threat.
Right.
And the rest of the world seems like Disneyland. So that's amazing. Um, I was about 22, 23, and I was working as an EMT on the ambulance. And I was doing 24-hour shifts. And when I wasn't on the ambulance, I was training. Um, one day on the ambulance, I had a call that was like a straw that broke the camel's back in terms of just my nervous system state, which was usually normally very
Mhm.
calm, very nice, like very like I would go into the gym and you would spar with somebody, but it's always very respectful. It's an honor to do that with your friends. The next day after I had this call, I had the call around like 3 a.m. It was a bad traffic accident where I was in the back of a car with somebody who had passed away for a very long time and was kind of just looking at the face of death for a long time. And it was just coming through my awareness. And
Yeah.
so the next day I did what I did always on my off days. I trained in the morning grappling. And that was the first time that I was training where I had the reaction where like I wanted to hurt my training partner. And I was like,
Mm.
that's interesting. Like I haven't like I don't really these are my
Yeah.
friends. I've been training with them for 5 years. Like this is the only time I want to hurt somebody. And then I watched as that hurt and that confusion of wanting to hurt somebody built so much energy inside of me. And I would have one of two reactions where like people would have to pull me off of somebody or I was like kind of like crying on the side of the mat. So it was like very strange. And I was also just
Yeah.
watching myself do that. Like, man, like last week training was like my safety, my haven. Like that was what was grounding for me. And then all of a sudden today, it's like too much. I'm like, what's going on? Um, so I had to make a transition and pivot, but that happened from one instance and can change how an environment is handled by somebody, or like maybe it's just too much for your nervous system capacity at that time. Um, so, it's not something that anyone can tell you this is good for you or this is not good for you. You can make an argument from a certain standpoint, but even if, let's say, something like I personally believe that engaging in CrossFit as it is today with the heavy lifting and the barbells, after 2 to 3 years, will degenerate your movement and joints in a way that will leave you more susceptible to chronic pain or injury in the future.
Sure.
But somebody could be doing CrossFit and be having this experience that is soothing for their nervous system or soothing for their emotional state or good for their life in whatever reason, and at that time is more positive than it is like negative. We don't know that. We don't know about anyone.
Hmm.
The only person we know is ourselves. Whether this thing is good for
Yeah.
me, it's helping me, it's empowering me, or it's disempowering me. Um, so you know, it's hard to make those distinctions, but to answer your question, it can happen really fast. So I guess the thing that is, how do we have the awareness or the tools to make this switch or make the environment work for us? If I don't have to leave, can I make this environment work for me? If I want to do CrossFit, but I know that heavy lifting and barbells is not good for me, can I do something like grab a kettlebell or a sandbag or just do
Hmm.
body weight? Give myself the permission just to do body weight.
Right.
Like I don't have to be all crazy like these young people like
Yeah.
slamming weights. Like I'm just here just to get a simple workout. This is not, I'm not trying to be competitive. Let me just give myself the permission to do body weight or to go on a walk instead of like, oh, I have to go on this 3 mile run like right now, type of thing.
Yeah, I appreciate that approach so much just because it's like so polar opposite of what you typically hear in mainstream fitness realm. It's like this is it. Like let me save your life because I have, which is just I think disassociating a lot of the responsibility that we have to like at the end of the day, dude, like you know your body best. And I will say from a female perspective, like I mentioned, some of the most freeing aspects that I've introduced into movement in general has been cyclical awareness and just like the way that a female body should approach fitness differently. So I
Yep.
don't know if you agree to that, but I'm
Well,
curious.
can I pause you because I'm super excited about this conversation.
Yes, go
I
for it.
understand that this is very important. It is, I don't hear it enough, and I don't know enough about it. So as much as you want to get into how cyclical training, give us a depth and dive about it because I'm here for it.
Yeah, I could talk about this all day, but it's been this place where I'm learning because it's definitely like this is not my forte of research, but it's been this place where, like you said, I can think back to my CrossFit season in my early college years and being like, this was so beneficial for my body because it was mentally, emotionally, spiritually what I needed. I needed the regimented movement. I needed a class of older women and men that had no, weren't college age and had no real in-depth perspective to where I was in my life and just to be me
Mhm.
and show up and do the hard things and just like kind of just be with my group of people that didn't know Raina outside of the gym, which was honestly like healthy for what I needed in that season of my life.
Yep.
So when it came to cyclical training, as I started to understand this, I I now understand why I felt so bad during that season. There are pockets of time where I was like, I really, really don't want to go to the gym where I had access to the workouts ahead of time and I had a visceral reaction of like, I know what my workout is today and I might cry on the way to the gym because I feel so bad. And again, my coaches, my teammates, my friends were like, not at all judgmental. But like you said, it's this almost mob mentality of like, you're going to go in and you need to do what you need to do. And what cyclical training brought me was the mental, emotional, and physical freedom to give my feminine body space to pause. So, one of the things that I talk about with women is like, not only is cyclical training beneficial or cyclical periodization beneficial because it equips you to have more tools in your toolbox as a woman who wants to pursue fitness, there's a mental component that I didn't have previously. So, like, approaching my menstrual cycle this month, I'm like, wow, I feel pretty good. I don't usually feel this good around my menstrual cycle. Am I going to go for a run? Definitely not. Give me 10 days. I'll probably go for a run. And I'm not a runner, you know? But it was this mental capacity to be like, oh, if I feel like trash more often than not in my luteal phase, I don't have to beat myself up because I'm not deadlifting or my barbell back squat doesn't feel great because my my body is preparing to menstruate. Like, I think it was cyclically having the freedom mentally, emotionally, and physically to make changes that I needed to change. And what also just like rubs me the wrong way about this conversation now is unfortunately a lot of women are like, cyclical training is not beneficial, which I would say to some extent, depending on where you are and your capacity to add this to your toolbox, it may not be. So there's that caveat. But I think there's a great misunderstanding of cyclical fitness right now because it's not this for the for my follicular phase, I'm going to go balls to the wall, make the PRs. During my ovulation window, sure, will I try and throw around some heavier weights or challenge my body like running because I don't necessarily want to run or like to run? Absolutely. But it doesn't mean that come the luteal phase in the second half where my hormones are naturally telling my body to slow down, I'm going to walk. Like, I think there's this big misconception around cyclical fitness right now, at least on social media that I've seen. It's like, it's not the same polarizing narrative that we're hearing in holistic community, in fitness community. And now women are just trying to take this like new concept to make, just this, it's either it is or it isn't. I think for me, it's been, like I said, the equipping tools to change the way that I live outside of the gym. And I have some amazing resources and just simple changes that I make to my training program when I do get in the gym.
Mm-hmm.
And that's on a hormonal basis.
Yeah. Wild how much, like, even when I think about training or fitness culture, how much hormones are talked about, especially performance enhancing drugs, people taking TRT later in life, like, and how crucial that is to like have enough hormones and to not have like no hormones for men and women. And then you see the
Right.
performance enhancement. And then a lot of the time that hormonal conversation happens both in the fitness world and in the holistic health and wellness type of world. But for sure in the fitness world is exploited and or just talked about from, many different perspectives. And it's interesting for something like, let's say, a CrossFit gym. There's the program is for both men and women. And it doesn't mean that it doesn't have to be like, here's your men's one and here's your women's one. But to say that a female
Right.
who does menstruate every single month, usually normally, or regularly throughout her months, throughout her years, there
Mm-hmm.
is a hormonal wave that happens. Why wouldn't you capitalize on that? Capitalize on what would be
Mm-hmm.
good for today,
Exactly.
depending on what's happening in my body. And like you said, for some women, it doesn't mean you have to like adhere yourself to some kind of strict regimen, but just be aware of the
Mm-hmm.
waves of change within your own body that happen day to day, week to week, and give yourself the freedom to make a choice, the opportunity to choose something that is more helpful to the situation and your state than it is
Mm-hmm.
destructive or taking something away from you because you feel like I just need to do this. This is what I should do, instead of be like you said, well, I can just do a walk. And now I'm on the walk and I get to do a walk. And wow, this is really
Right.
helpful for me and with everything that's happening in my body. Does that kind of sum it up?
Yeah, absolutely. Which is interesting from just a small thing that I've learned, and it's and kind of related, but like a barbell. I remember thinking I need to use the men's barbell because it's heavier and I'm not using the girls' barbell, right? And then I realized, no, it's because it fits my hands. Like it's actually made to fit me better. It's not this like ego thing in the gym. And it was just funny because I saw it with another creator as well, talking about cyclical fitness and how she just used to perceive that same thing as well. It's like, that's so interesting.
hmm It's helpful. It's helpful.
Hmm.
It's a model. It doesn't mean that it's like something you have to follow. It's a tool. It's a model that can help us make better choices. That's the same conversation I'm having with Primal Movement. Ultimately, this is an awareness. This is a tool. This is a model that can help you make better choices. It's not like when people hear Primal Movement, they're like, oh, people bear crawling on the grass and
Sure.
like climbing these trees, they're wearing loincloths. It's like that's the romanticized fantasy.
Mm,
Really, Primal Movement is you getting up out of bed and you
yeah.
walking to the kitchen, or you stepping into your car, or you going to a workout at the gym. Those are all part of your primal movements that you do every single day. So, can
Yeah.
you are you comfortable breaking down those 4 cycles and us kind of chopping it up
Yeah.
on that? Because I would also like to provide some primal movements, or like some normal movements that we all do, maybe into that would be cool for me if we could do that.
Yeah.
So,
Um, yeah, I definitely have an episode where Courtney Babilia, my friend she's the queen of cyclical fitness. So if you don't have, from a women's standpoint, if you want to dive in more into that, I'll link that episode. But basically, normally, a woman that's menstruating naturally, so not on birth control,
yeah.
which that's a whole other conversation. But you'll walk through menstruation, which is typically day 1 to 5 ish. Some women experience longer menstruation windows based on where their body is mentally, physically, stressors. Um, Typically, that's your reset point. I just think of like, all hormones are resetting. You're coming off of the ebbs and flows of progesterone in the later end of your cycle. So, menstruation is your clean slate. So, the first half is follicular phase, which includes menstruation. So that's typically days, I'm saying calendar days, not necessarily like your fertility awareness days. So day 1 to 14 is your follicular phase. So you can think about these as um, like seasons. So you have um, just your springtime, summer vibe in your follicular phase as your body is coming out of menstruation into ovulation. And that's when women typically feel the best. There's a lot of research behind they socially interact more. They are perceived more beautiful for themselves and others. Their pheromones change, which is also just like super fascinating to dive into in terms of like being desirable by the opposite sex. You feel more confident as a woman in your ovulation phase. In the gym, that is typically the place where you should try and challenge yourself. I'm not saying go for, your 1 rep max, but that's typically the time where I'm like, great, I'm going to put some weight on the bar that I may not have in a little bit, and we'll just kind of see what happens. And that doesn't necessarily happen every cycle. Transitioning into your luteal phase, which is just typically 14 to 28, so just the second half of your cycle, things are starting to slow down. So, estrogen, as you're coming off of the estrogen peak of ovulation, progesterone is starting to enter the game. And that some women just talk about as progesterone being like the nesting hormone. So, if my body were to think I got pregnant during ovulation, it's like, all right, let's go ahead and slow down. Like, if we're preparing to have a baby, but it's just this um, slower phase that's preparing your body for the hormonal dump that comes with menstruation. And I think a lot of women coming off of ovulation, entering the luteal phase, where some discussions arise on social media, is I think that they think that come, last day of ovulation, I'm entering my luteal phase, which means my typically 3 days of higher body temperatures are here. Great, I've ovulated. It means that you just walk. It's not necessarily true. Coming off of ovulation, I'm not hitting the same weights that I did in that phase, but I still have enough estrogen in the tank to move well. And it's not just like this black and white, like I'm going to go hard and then I'm going to completely stop all movement. So I'll typically like taper off my strength training based on like volume or intensity. And typically, depending on at the end of my late luteal phase, closer to the days before menstruation, is again, depending on my energy levels, I'll navigate that, whether it is just walking or is just a bowstring class or it's just body weight movements so that I feel not as rigid going into menstruation.
So are there 3 phases or 4?
There's 4.
So, I wrote down here, I was taking notes, and I'm trying to wrap my head
Mm-hmm.
around this. There's the, um, our menstruation,
Mm-hmm.
day 1 to 5, clean slate. We have their follicular, that includes the menstruation, day 1 to 14. That's our summer good vibes, feeling good.
Yeah.
And then we have the luteal phase, 14 to 28, nesting, slowing it down. That's kind of our general cycle. And then in between that, there'll be like some kind of spectrum of like transition type of thing. So like phasing from more resistance training, the follicular to luteal, going into like a deload type
Mm-hmm.
of sensation.
Absolutely.
And how helpful has it been for your life, like having this framework and then allowing yourself the options to not do a heavy resistance day or not heavy training and give yourself the opportunity to walk? How have you seen that impact your life?
It's been a game changer. I think a lot of women, like I mentioned, the mental component of that has been so freeing. And with the awareness of thinking back to my CrossFit days, oh, if I had had these tools then, I probably would have been a lot more gracious with myself.
Mm,
I didn't have to beat myself up if my run time at the gym came in last because I was days before I started my period. But I
right.
also now feel so much more confident in the gym because I look forward to the different hormonal changes. Like, I look
Mhm.
forward to going to the gym when I'm ovulating because I feel more sexy and I know that my weights are going to go up. Like, it's just this area where I have more confidence. And I think this goes for everything across the board. Like you said, in integration, it's like I have more confidence with the awareness. So going from menstruation, where I know I'm not going to be feeling great, to my follicular phase, knowing like the stars are going to align, and then moving into ovulation and my luteal phase, I have more confidence knowing that I have tools to live the best Reina that I can be in motherhood and my friendships with my husband as I cycle through these phases versus it being a place of shame.
Yeah. And I think, I wonder if that place of shame happens because of we identify ourselves with something like, I'm a runner, I do CrossFit, I go to the gym. And then
Spot
all of a sudden
on.
you're like, I
Yes.
don't go to the gym. And you're like, well, then who am I? Type of thing. And
Hmm. I've had that same conversation with women coming out of or in postpartum. It's like, if I was an athlete,
right,
now what am I?
right.
I'm just a mom.
Yeah. And we know that that's what happens. You get the gold medal at the Olympics, and the next day, oh man, that's it's starting to go low. It's starting to come down. And then, yeah, our identity gets kind of moved around. So I think what is cool is this model, which is like helpful for you and helpful for your life, can allow you just to see that and then create new identities or new parts of yourself that you're excited for.
Hmm.
Like having, the person who goes hard in the gym or who's outside and who's confident and who's social, like really getting, knowing where the environments and how you enjoy that experience Maybe it's like at the beach, like
Mm-hmm.
being in like, your beach outfit and then swimming or surfing, something like
Right.
that. But then also having this like a personal stretching or movement practice that you do at home, by yourself. And it's like that's something that is also just
Mm-hmm.
as important to you as the surfer or this CrossFitter or whatever you have. And
Yeah.
like, and knowing like how you can create identities doing things that aren't like as spectacular, like the walk that you have with yourself or maybe with your family or your dog, like making that really part of your process too and really enjoying it. So it's not like you're missing out on
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is that you're supposed to be doing, but you instead have another opportunity to experience life in your body in another way that is almost exactly the opposite, but just as filling.
Absolutely. So do you think that there's this place in masculinity, and I'm thinking from the masculine realm of fitness culture, or even like my husband in the military, like where do you think the struggle is to not define your identity in these practices or these activities that you're doing to transition to integration and like primal movement within like a masculine lens?
I think it's trying to liberate your awareness and your movement from the things that you're doing with it. I think if you can
Mm-hmm.
liberate your movement from those things, then you can start to see the hobbies that you engage with or the jobs that you have, like a firefighter that he has, as not I am a
Mm-hmm.
firefighter, but me as a human being, as a mover, I am learning this certain skill set by being a firefighter. And yes, that is an
Yeah.
identity that I have, but it contributes to an overall identity of all of the list of things that I can do. I can go surf. I can go hike. I can go be a father and play with my kids. I can
Yeah.
have a 20-minute stretch session in the backyard. I do golfing. Like it's part of like this whole entire um, all of your skill set. It's a feeding of your skill set. But as soon as one of those skill sets becomes your everything, then that's when we can start to ignore what our body is asking us. Hey, I think it's really cool that you love, like, for instance, jujitsu and martial arts.
Sure.
However, just a month ago, you hurt your knee and now you hurt your neck and now you hurt this, and your body's saying, hey, like, this is super cool. Like, continue doing this, but also I want to let you know that if we continue down this, I think it's going to be bad. And so your body will start to say, here, now we have this neck pain. Now we have this stiffness and
Mm.
tightness. Now we're starting to develop a low anxiety about going to the gym because our deep
Mm.
subconscious, our body intelligence is telling us you might get hurt. And so that's like, why am I
Yeah.
feeling this pain? Why am I feeling anxious? I don't know. Let me just take some ibuprofen and continue doing this
Mm-hmm.
thing that is trying to feed my ego, and just recognize this is feeling a part of me, but it also has a negative repercussion. Um, and so I think as men, we can easily define ourselves by the profession, the thing that we're doing that we're good at, because we want to be recognized, we want to be capable, we want to be proficient. And when we find ourselves good at doing something, we can get trapped. And so never let yourself get
Yeah.
trapped and get good at a lot of things. Like get good at a
Mm-hmm.
lot of things. I heard Kobe Bryant say, sometimes people say don't put all your eggs in one basket, but because if that basket goes away, you have no more eggs. And he said,
Yeah.
just create more eggs. Like you can be good at so many more things if you allowed yourself to be a beginner for just a little bit and then to master something else. That way you can master doing something that's violent, something that is has a lot of compression and impact on the body. Something like even CrossFit is violent. There's a lot of things in the world that we
Mm-hmm.
do to experience
Yeah.
some sort of violence or aggression, and then having on the other side some kind of like healing practice or filling up practice or
Mm.
recovery practice that you are equally as skilled at. As hard as you can go in the gym, that's as hard as you should be able to recover. But if you can't recover that hard, you're just going and destroying and breaking down in violence, 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 and you don't have the other side. And that goes both ways. You'll see both in like yogi cultures or stretch cultures, or people who are very concerned with everything being perfect in their body
Yeah.
can't do something that's aggressive and violent or super athletic. Then you see some athletic people that just can't turn it off.
Yeah.
So I don't know, we have to liberate ourselves and our awareness, and models like the one you were talking about, cyclical fitness, or models like Primal Movement, help us to see our life as more than just our profession or our hobbies.
hmm So with that, would you say that's the first step into just engaging in more of a primal mindset is, hey, let's not attach our whole identity and ego to what we practice, and maybe just like think about, am I getting out of bed in a way that makes me feel good? Like, is that the first step? Like, how do we start incorporating this in a way that
Yeah.
might take a little bit of a transition period?
There's two major entry points. The first entry point, a lot of people are unfortunately experiencing right now, but it's also very okay. And they have the awareness that something is not necessarily feeling good, or what I call a
hmm
red light.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, I get out of bed, and the movement of me getting out of bed, I always experience low back stiffness and or pain. And
hmm
that's like something that just registers in your brain as like, hold on, just like a little light on your dashboard in your car. Like, red light, something's happening that we need to adjust and fix. And that's your body expressing that to you and inviting you into questioning, understanding, and changing something that you're doing in your lifestyle or even in that exact moment, so that you don't have that red light
Yeah.
again. So that's how people are invited into that, and people can do that intuitively with themselves, and they have a really good relationship with their body, and they're like, "Oh, it's because I slept on this really soft mattress, and that doesn't make me feel good. But I noticed
hmm
when I slept on this harder mattress, or even on the floor, I felt way better. So let me just do that." And they can just make those changes really rapidly because they have a healthy, positive relationship with their body where there's a lot of listening and responding. Um, Other people might not have that healthy of a relationship. And that's when something like inviting in a coach or inviting in somebody else, or even listening to this podcast and listening about different models that you can put on in your awareness, so that you can say like, oh, I didn't even recognize that getting out of bed with my knees hurting or my back hurting, or like feeling super tight, like I can't move my neck until like I have my coffee and then things open up. Like, you didn't even recognize that was a red light until
Right.
somebody says like, hey, that's not normal experience for you. And they're like, oh, like, I don't know. So pain is one entryway and doorway. And the second one is um, just an overall curiosity and awareness. And this is more rare, but somebody who's just curious, like, is there a way that I can walk up the stairs to my bedroom better? Can I
Yeah.
do it in a way that feels better on my body? Um, that's a more of a unique type of person. They're bringing a training mentality into the everyday movements of their life. Hopefully, you're trying to get both of those people to come to some just deeper understanding and relationship with their body on the things that it makes it feel really good and
hmm
the things that it doesn't really enjoy, and just constantly trying to be aware and have better feedback. So those are the two kind of entry points that we got. Unfortunately, most of us are coming
Yeah.
from the red light, like something's
Yeah.
happening. I don't really like this.
Yeah. Which I've experienced both. But even going through your content, I was like, wait a minute. Like, and I've been introduced with bowstring is like, oh, how can I walk? Like, I'm unlearning everything, especially like coming from a CrossFit background. I think it was like extremely helpful in what I needed for that season of life to be equipped to know my body. And now it's in this place of like, okay, now that I know my body and I have some of these tools and I know that I can move differently over the 4 courses of my cycle, what does that look like to like integrate patiently? When we come to the process of integration, we're very impatient. So how would you encourage
Mm,
someone that's
yeah,
trying to dive in to be patient with themselves in this learning process or unlearning?
it really is. You got to be able to enjoy that process of letting go or relearning and be there with
Yeah.
it every step of the way as much as you can be. And so you can participate in the conversation. It's like your body is constantly talking to you, like someone you're at, if you went on a date with somebody and they're just talking at you and you don't respond or you don't give anything back, like if you're present with that conversation that you can have every single day, and communicate even when it's difficult, especially when it's difficult, um, that process can be extremely full of like so many good feelings, so much joy, so much comfort, so much confidence, so much
Yeah.
excitement. You can really take it so many different directions if you're willing to have that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about this a little bit before, but oftentimes with fitness or nutrition, we're trying to achieve being fit, or we're trying to achieve I am now healthy because I'm eating X, Y, and Z, and I'm not eating X, Y, and Z. Um, but if we
Yeah.
instead say, I'm not trying to achieve a certain something, but simply have a better relationship with my movement, have a better relationship with my body, and be present enough to know when the relationship needs some fixing, and when it doesn't need any fixing, like how can I just encourage and stoke the flame, whatever it is I have, whether it's a really relaxing day, just giving myself the ability to lay down on the floor and just completely enjoy laying down on the floor
Mm-hmm.
and just soak it up. Like I don't have to do anything but just lay here without your head going,
Mm-hmm.
or going and doing something like a hard
Yeah.
run or whatever it is and enjoying
Yeah.
the challenge of that, and just knowing that it's all part of the same spectrum of you and how you move through everything. And there really isn't necessarily something that you need to do or to achieve. It's more just an experience, and what type of experience do you want to have with your body? So whether you're doing something great, there's a bunch of people clapping and seeing what you're doing online, or you're just,
Mm.
cleaning the dishes and you're like, I just feel really relaxed cleaning the dishes right now. I feel at peace. I feel like I'm cleaning the dishes really well. I'm happy that I'm doing chores. Like this is good. Like that's nice. Like you're having an actual relationship and experience with your
Yeah.
body while cleaning the dishes that can be really helpful, instead of like
Mm-hmm.
you're doing them like all tense. Like I gotta get these things done. I gotta get it done. Or like the classic dad who does all his work and he's pissed off and
Yeah.
he's angry. It's like, you can get the same work done and it could be like you can feel really
Mm-hmm.
good in your body. But we don't know that if we're kind of constricted and tense. So the moment we start to ask those
Uh-huh.
questions of like, can I do this better? How do I feel right now? Does this make me feel better? Do I feel better after doing this CrossFit class? Do I feel better after sitting in a chair at my office at work, or do I feel worse?
Right.
And I'm constantly being open to those feedback. Um, just like if we were in a relationship and someone said, "Hey, that doesn't make me feel good when you do that," and they just like told that to you and you just completely ignored
Mm-hmm.
it, like that would be really sad, but also that would come back again and again and again. And each time that it came back, it would be louder and more aggressive until there was a
Yeah.
reaction response from you. And so that's what our body is doing. And many people, their body is screaming at
Yeah.
them right now because they're not just simply listening to those very subtle things like you're talking about. I could be driving, I can make one little adjustment, and whoa, I feel good. And now I have the ability to enjoy being on a road trip instead
Mm-hmm.
of feeling like compressed in any kind of way. So the process of integration, I believe, is just learning to um, be part of every single moment of integrating, knowing that integration is an infinite process and an infinite conversation that we will have. One day that conversation will come to an end. And so before it comes to an end, like I just want to have a good conversation with you.
Yeah.
Like let's just have a good time. Let's
Yeah.
have a good conversation. Like let's not make this difficult.
Right. No, I love that perspective. And I think it's really encouraging from even just speaking with other women of approaching our bodies as it's a relationship. So that's been even healing in my own story. But, ma'am, where can we connect with you, get you plugged in and your services and your YouTube? Where can we find you?
Yeah, the first place where you can look at the professional and business is primalmovement.org. That's a place where you can um, get training, one-on-one training with me. You can find a list of coaches that we've certified through our Primal Movement certification who have this model and this awareness and this ability to work with people and have these conversations. Um, you can also find more information, free workouts at Primal Movement on YouTube if you're curious and you want to jump right in. And then on Instagram, Bam Lionheart. Send me a message if you want to ask some questions, or I do consult calls for people who want to know a little bit more
Hmm.
about how to move in a natural way, maybe reduce some pain in their body, or work with a coach on how they can really expedite that integration process.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I'm really curious to how you'll answer our closing question just because you've shared so much wisdom here. So, if you could provide any wisdom to your younger self or for our community that is listening, what would you share?
The younger self question always gets me like, man, what would I say to my younger self? And it would be you know the never stop moving, like continue moving and continue moving forward, like
Mm,
never stop moving forward. Anytime that I felt in my life stagnation or an unwillingness to move forward,
hmm
or not knowing a way to move forward or feeling like a wall, those times when we can overcome those walls or those obstacles, and hindsight is 2020, when we see how we were able to move through a situation, an environment, a struggle, a difficulty, or even learning something that was positive but was challenging for us, and just having this mentality like continue moving forward, um, because it's like what I did in my teens and my 20s is like has directly molded me into
hmm
somebody.
Yeah.
And when we recognize that like my movement today will feed me tomorrow and in the future and will create this new reality for me, the only thing I need to do today is just to keep moving forward and
hmm
to try and do that with as much presence as possible.
Yes, absolutely. Bam, this was such a beautiful conversation, and we're so thankful for joining us in our community today.
Thank you for having me, and appreciate the conversation.
Of course. Well, we will catch you guys in the next episode. Thank you for listening, friend. I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you don't want to miss any wisdom or encouragement, be sure to subscribe to the show. And don't forget to rate and review. Your feedback means so much and helps our community grow. If you're looking for more wellness wisdom and free resources, head over to livingwiselywell.com or get connected with me on Instagram at wiselywell. And if you're looking for a break from the hurried health lifestyle, check out my Return to Rest resource for tangible ways to slow down and finally find rest.